Must be a whirlwind day for you, Dansby.
Oh, let me tell you, the past week and a half have been a whirlwind, from getting married to being on my honeymoon to then getting back and repacking a bag and leaving the house an hour later to come up to Chicago to a physical and a press conference and everything that today has entailed. It's been quite an off season, but definitely very grateful for it. And, it's definitely a good problem to have, that's for sure.
All right, so Dansby, look, I'm going to take you away from baseball for a second for a pretty big story that's happening in Chicago right now that I imagine you might actually have some intel on. What is your thoughts on Justin Fields?
It's funny. So Justin Fields, we actually grew up probably like 15 minutes from each other. He went to actually a rival high school of mine. I do not know him personally. He's a little bit younger than me. But obviously, he's a tremendous athlete, man. He's had success everywhere he's been, and I expect that to continue. He's already shown his growth this year, at the quarterbacking position, and you just kind of think that if they get, a star wide receiver around him, that he's got a chance to be pretty special.
This is his city now. I mean, I don't know if you need permission to do certain things or go certain places, but that's the dude.
He is pretty darn good.
And we appreciate the comment about the wide receiver. And it's funny you bring it up because that's essentially what you're doing with the Cubs. They said they wanted to add talent. They added you. Of course, you were one of the class of an amazing group of shortstops. We heard you discuss the process that you went through, and I want to get into that a little bit later. But also, we want to know what was said to you. What did Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins say to you about what they want to build here and how you fit in with that?
Yeah, so I think that the one thing that I loved them saying was wanting to build a winning culture and wanting to do it, with kind of what I have in terms of vision and how that looks, which is just such an amazing appeal. I feel like I've been able to be successful in terms of winning everywhere that I've been, and something that I strive for. Like, winning is my number one and top priority in everything it is that I do, and being able to share a vision like that with an ownership, family in the Ricketts, and obviously Jed and Carter Hawkins, wanting to build that same kind of culture is just something that just had my eyes light up right away. And, they have definitely promised that they will, uncover every rock and stone that there is in order to get this, organization back to where it belongs.
When you come from a place that's done some winning recently, how difficult is it to leave that?
It's difficult for, a couple of reasons. Obviously, winning at the rate in which we did in Atlanta speaks for itself. And then obviously, that being my hometown is another thing. Having family there, having friends there, having roots there. It was not an easy decision whatsoever. I had a lot of very honest conversations with teammates, with the general manager, with the owner, and just kind of getting a lay of the land of what was to come, and, kind of started to feel like that I wasn't a part of that. And at the same time, it was almost like one door was shutting as the other door was opening, and Chicago was very quickly starting to become a place that we felt, we could call home for the foreseeable future. And like I said, very, very grateful that it has worked out. Chicago, even just stepping out on the field today, I had this huge smile on my face, and I just knew at that moment that this was the right decision.
I'm curious about the diplomatic protocol on a couple of fronts for you. One being what we've heard about, very common, getting the uniform number that you wanted. Jan Gomes had been 7, and now you're 70. Usually there's some consideration there. There's a deal that's brokered. But when you come in and Nico Horner is moving to a different position, you're the shortstop. And he was terrific last year. It was a 4-win shortstop. And for him to move off of that now, do you guys talk about it, or does Jed, does that all go through Jed and David Ross? How does that work?
The number part, it was funny. Jan had actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago about sending a jersey out to this family and kid that he knows. And I was just giving him a hard time because I was like, I thought you were going to be recruiting me to the Cubs or something. And he had no idea that the Cubs and I had mutual interests. And I was like, well, if that happens, then, I might be asking you for 7. And he was like, well, you can take it without, you don't need to give me anything, this and that. So as the year goes along, I'm sure I will have cooked up some type of great gift to be able to give him for the number. And then when it comes to the other thing, Nico is obviously a fantastic player. I've been a fan of his for, the last couple of years since he got called up to the big leagues, and really, really appreciated and liked his game because in a similar way to me, like, we just want to win. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about him, and he just wants to win, wants to do anything it takes to win. And, I feel like that, with him being open to playing second base just tells you anything and everything you need to know about the guy, that he cares about the team, he cares about the organization, and is willing to do anything it takes to, put wins on the board and obviously help this great organization accomplish what it wants to.
You also mentioned in the press conference knowing Ian Happ, Jason Hayward, and Jock Peterson. And even though you and Jan Gomes may not have the conversation, what did they tell you about Chicago when you were getting ready to become a free agent and then also going through this process?
The resounding statement was basically like that it was a perfect fit for who I am and my personality. That just the things that I care about, this organization cares about, the way things are done, just fit me to a T. And this amazing city and fan base is right there in line with who I am. So, I couldn't be happier to be a part of this organization and couldn't be, more blessed to, be here. And like I said, Jock is one of my favorites. And, just some of the things that he was saying about, just the infrastructure of the Cubs and the willingness to help players grow and to get better would really suit me well.
You've hit very well in Wrigley Field over your career in 16 games and 72 plate appearances, an 854 OPS. Just the one home run. Do you remember it? Do you remember anything interesting about it?
Oh, I remember. I hit into the basket, first of all. It's to right field, and my helmet fell off because I didn't know if it was getting out. So I was running hard. My helmet fell off, and as I was touching second base, Javi pretty much laughed and he said, "Hey, you going to go get that?" And I stopped for a second and then kept running. And I felt like an idiot running around the bases without a helmet on. But that's the only thing that I remember. I don't know if you remember something else, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, because I was going to ask about Wrigley Field itself. It's one thing to be a visiting player and have success, but it's a wonderful and strange place in a lot of ways, in that it can be two different parks, wind blowing in, wind blowing out, and it could be two different parks riding high or riding low. There's big emotional swings there, and I don't know if that's something that you've asked any of your new teammates about, but Wrigley is unique in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, Wrigley is baseball at its purest form, and that's one of the things that I appreciate most about it. Obviously, that and the fans, just absolutely tremendous combination. The fans and the historical nature of the park, and obviously the things that they've done to kind of renovate certain areas, but. Like you said, it can be a great place to hit, but it can also be a great place to play defense. That's how the optimistic view of it. So I'm looking forward to the challenges that it presents. And, I think it's just something that, winning in this fan base or with this fan base and in this stadium, probably beats anywhere else in the world.
Dansby, you talked a lot in your press conference about leadership and bristling at the name the Sheriff, which we think is cool, by the way. I think you should keep that nickname. What does leadership in a major league clubhouse look like to you?
Servant leadership. That's kind of what I was taught at Vanderbilt, kind of how I grew up, and the family that I grew up in. It's setting a standard, and it's holding to it every day. It's the discipline to work hard each and every day. It's the discipline to respect each other along that process. And, in our household growing up, having faith in God's plan was a big deal. So putting those three together, loving each other, I always like to say, serve from the back, not the front. You don't want to just pull everybody along. You want to be the last guy. You want to push from behind. Ultimately, it just comes down to loving one another and creating an atmosphere in which people want to be a part of.
You come from a winning atmosphere when it comes to Vanderbilt, also with the Atlanta Braves. And there's something that the Braves did that you were a part of that we've talked about a lot on this station. And that was the midseason defensive adjustments that your infield made when it came to knowing how to do that and then knowing it was going to put you over the top, along with a couple of savvy trades to win the World Series. Can you talk about that and the evaluation that you guys did in order to adjust midseason and then turn it into what ultimately became good to great?
In a very friendly kid way, like to be able to say it, we just had a very honest sit down and just said, myself and the rest of the infielders and Ron Washington just sat down like, this isn't working. Like, we're giving up too many base hits. We need to really, really make an adjustment either one way or the other. And obviously we were able to push the right button and to be able to make, things really, really, work better for us. One thing I'll say too about just like defense and infield defense specifically, like, you have to have pitchers to execute pitches, as well. They, we make each other look good. And when pitchers are throwing the ball well and throwing it where they want to, usually your defense is going to be in the right spot at the right time to be able to make those plays.
Well, then you take that and you end up using it not just on this team, but is that something where you learn from the process and could use on this team, this Cubs team moving forward, the idea of adjusting and reevaluating and knowing what it takes to improve and possibly win if something isn't working and you guys want to make a change?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. Baseball's too hard. There's so many adjustments that are made by opposing teams for you to just do the same thing over and over again. I think it's one of those fine lines to, we're obviously going to put all the emphasis and focus on ourselves to be the best that we can be. But we can't be silly or stupid and not make adjustments along the way to make that product as good as it can be.
One adjustment this year is to the new rule. At the time a pitch is thrown, there need to be 4 infielders on the dirt and 2 on each side of second base. And this is the part I think is cool. Players will be able to move as soon as the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. Now, I don't know how closely it's going to be enforced or policed, but the fact is that this kind of explosiveness, this kind of athleticism and range now, if there is an ideal spot for this hitter and you're going to have to race to get there and communicate with Nico and others, have you guys sort of gamed this out just in general, even casually talking to other infielders about what this is going to mean for how you're going to do your job on every pitch?
Not fully, no. I think that's the conversation that happens in spring training when you kind of sit and talk about and kind of go over what's going to be the best way to defend certain players, certain teams, what's going to allow us to have the most success. I mean, I think that it's important to be able to obviously do your research and have the numbers that kind of say where to be and those kinds of things. But there's also there's a human nature to our game. If we played this game, in a vacuum, analytics would always be perfect, but this is a human game. There's a lot of human error. And it's about being able to make adjustments on the fly, in game and obviously, throughout series and throughout each month. So it's gonna be fun how this year plays out.
Dansby, considering what the market was like for shortstops, what do you think was it about the Cubs that put them over the top for you? Because there had to be a bunch of teams that wanted you to play short for them.
Like I said, we had prayed on this, my wife and I, for a very long time, just about leading us to where we were supposed to be and to trust in that plan, to have like the strength and courage to be able to go wherever it is that we felt called to be. And after sitting down with Jed and Carter and Rossi and having those conversations and then having, some lengthy conversations on the phone and really having an honest assessment about the organization, the Cubs just felt like, where we were being led to be. Like I kind of alluded to on, and told the story of my grandfather on, or during the press conference, it just was one of those moments that just kind of solidified, like Chicago is where we're supposed to be. And, it's something we're going to completely embrace.
In that story about your grandfather, that emotional story, you talked about going into his house across your yard and how often you would see the Cubs games were on. So I was trying to sort of reverse engineer the numbers here. We're talking about, those were like the Dusty Baker managed, was that Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor and those ascendant Cubs teams?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was probably 7, 8, 9 at the time. So anywhere from 2000, 2005, like in that whole range. I was born in 94. So definitely saw many of Cubs games on WGN at the time when I was growing up. And, obviously started to have a little bit of affinity towards the Chicago Cubs and their organization. And like I said, this jersey will always mean more to me than most people realize.
Who were your favorite players at that age? Which posters on your wall, or when you were out, outside playing, did you say I'm so and so?
So Nomar Garciaparra that was my guy growing up. I was a huge Garciaparra fan. I always had love for Derek Jeter as well, just because of being the captain of the New York Yankees and winning at the rate he did was incredibly impressive and something I admired for a long time. I actually had this movie I watched literally every day when I was a kid called Superstar Shortstops, and the focus was on Jeter, Nomar, and A-Rod, but they kind of highlighted shortstops throughout the history of time. And I got very, very close to knowing a lot about Ernie Banks. By watching that video, they did a big segment on him, and it was just really cool to be able to learn about him and, just be able to play the position that he played, and obviously set such an amazing precedent here, and standard for what the shortstop position looks like.